You've got Fox News saying the economy is a disaster, and you've got CNN and MSNBC and the Biden campaign saying it's the envy of the Western world. Well, what the frick is it, right? Who is right? What is actually going? Is the border a complete mess, or is it better than people think it is?
You know, Shapiro, Joe Rogan, and they're all in these digital spaces. And that's where young people are learning their civics from, that aren't always necessarily based in fact, but based in Republican or conservative ideals.
As the oldest president in American history, he has been able to accomplish more. Bipartisan background bills, the biggest climate change bill in human history, infrastructure, the CHIPS Act, all these things that no one said could get done. So I think if we get the country together once or twice every 4 years to have these national debates, let's actually see if we could all get on the same fact page.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Don Lemon Show. I am Don Lemon, of course, and we're joined today by political communications specialist, author, and the so-called civics dean, Richard Greene. Thanks for coming on the show. How you doing?
It's a great pleasure, Don. Always great to see you, and really happy to contribute to your new show.
Oh, thank you very much. Listen, I'm going to use some of your expertise to talk about first the upcoming 2024 presidential debate on Thursday. So it is the President Joe Biden, the former President Donald Trump. They're facing off in this 90-minute televised debate. There's some new rules, though. There's going to be no studio audience in attendance, right? Microphones are going to be muted between candidates when not called on to speak. No opening statements, no pre-written notes on stage. I mean, it sounds like a lot of rules. Like it's like a political playground or something.
Have you ever heard of Donald Trump?
I think I know where you're going with this.
Well, where I'm going is that there is so much performance, and Donald Trump is so great at it, and it's kind of an old-fashioned idea that you actually have a real conversation, a real debate about the issues, and I think that's what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that Donald Trump is going to play by these rules, though?
Yeah.
You do?
The provision I like the most is the cutting off of the microphone. And I think that takes away all of his power. Now, he can certainly have facial gestures and body language, as we know in communication, communicates a lot, but the camera may not even go there. So it's like, okay, President Biden, here's the question. Nothing else exists in the universe. And then, former President Trump, here's the question. Nothing else exists in the universe. I think that's a great service to the public.
Yeah, but you're going to hear him. If he decides to go off and they cut his mic, you're going to hear him on Joe Biden's mic, President Biden's mic, and, in the background. You don't think that
maybe
it's going to be weird?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they can figure out some way to, Trump cancel headphones or microphones.
Why can't they just show him being an imbecile? You know what I mean? Just being a child. I think that, I don't know, I think the public it's a public service to just show who he is, that he has no restraint, that he has no control, that he doesn't like to follow the rules.
Don,
yeah?
Have you watched this guy for the last 9 years?
Duh, yes, of course. I covered most of it.
Do you think there's any, listen, that is baked in. People who love Donald Trump actually kind of like that. People who are irritated by Donald Trump don't. I mean, I don't think that's the value. I think the value is, let's see if they can answer tough questions from real journalists. Let's see if they have substantive ideas. Let's see if they can hold their stuff together for 90 minutes. Let's see if Joe Biden can stand up without falling over for 90. I mean, all of these things we're looking at from a body language standpoint and a strategy and content strategy. I'm very excited about this debate.
Why did you say Joe Biden could stand up? Or you think he would fall over, or are you just saying what's been out there?
No, those are the things that are out there that people are questioning, right? I think it's clear. We saw the State of the Union. He can stand up. And now Fox News is saying, oh, he's taking all these performance enhancing drugs like an athlete, right? Okay, great. That's legal, right? And whatever he needs to do. You don't think Trump is doing things? Look what he does to his hair.
Yeah, that's quite something to do every day. That the system that he has. But I mean, listen, do you think that it would be better for Joe Biden if he kind of leaned into it more and even joked more about his age and to make people think like it's not such a big deal? Because I don't know. I think they're too cautious. They're too careful. The guy's 81 years
Well, I
old.
wrote
Okay.
I, I I actually wrote an article in Medium entitled "Maybe Joe Biden is Too Young." And the premise of the article was here he is, he's 81, he was 70, 77, 78, 70, no, 78, 79, 80, 81. And as the oldest president in American history, he has been able to accomplish more bipartisan background bills, the biggest climate change bill in human history,
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure, the CHIPS Act, all these things that no one said could get done. He was able to do it when his younger predecessor, Trump, Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton couldn't get it done. And maybe he's getting better. And that wisdom is actually a valuable thing in American politics. My 95-year-old mother, talks about him on TikTok as, young Joe Biden. And says if as long as well, when you're 95, 81's pretty freaking young. You know, and, and that he, as long as his mind is sharp and he's making good decisions and he's taking the advice of incredibly experienced people around him, that's he's going to still be able to serve and serve at a very high level.
Yeah.
So I think, and by the way, they say, oh, he can't walk very well. Well, one of the greatest presidents in American history couldn't walk at all.
Was in a wheelchair. I make that point all the time. But also, listen, I do have to say, as a the '80s, that's my favorite decade. I'm just saying. I grew up. I'm a man of a certain age, and I love the '80s. And I think that maybe Joe Biden should say that. Hey, the '80s is a great decade. Stop talking crap about the '80s. Do you think that speaking of
Well,
the
do you
other?
want to
Yeah.
if you want to write some one-liners for him, I'll get it to his campaign.
Okay, great. Um, on the other side, not far behind, you always use the analogy if you look in a yearbook, right? In a high school yearbook, Joe Biden would be in the senior class, Donald Trump would be in the freshman class. It's really not that much, age between
Right.
them, a difference in age between them. But do you think, if you saw the debate 4 years ago, it was vitriolic. I thought Joe Biden actually did a great job. People called it a dumpster fire. But Trump had the typical attack lines. Do you think the public is really, do you think the public has an appetite for these sort of smears this time around?
I think there are two things going on in politics. One is the performance aspects, the entertainment aspects. Someone told me, I kind of miss hearing about Donald Trump in the few days where we don't hear about him, because it's so much fun. He is the greatest reality television show ever, and that's really attractive. But I think we have to actually correct people on the facts about things. You've got Fox News saying the economy is a disaster, and you've got CNN and MSNBC and the Biden campaign saying it's the envy of the Western world. Well, what the frick is it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who is right? What is actually going? Is the border a complete mess, or is it better than people think it is? So I think as if we get the country together once or twice every 4 years to have these national debates, let's actually see if we could all get on the same fact
But what
page.
you're saying is exactly what's going to happen on that stage on Thursday, right? You're going to have, I had the greatest economy from, Trump on the right, well, he's on the right, but I think he's going to be the left side of the stage. And then you'll have Biden
Yes.
on the right side of the stage, who's on the left, saying Biden is going to say, I have the greatest economy. Trump's going to say, I have the greatest economy. Trump's going to say, his economy is a disaster. Biden's going to say Trump's economy was a disaster. He only gave tax cuts to the very rich and on. So then how do you figure out the truth, especially when there is no fact checker on the stage? And by the way, as someone who, does fact checks and has been living in the world of fact checks, they don't really punch through. What punches through really is the personality. I got to be honest with you.
Right. So the facts and the content. So there's something in communication strategy that you probably know about, because you're a phenomenal communicator, and that is that words only communicate 7% of the impact that one human being makes on another. 7%. I used to work very, very closely with Tony Robbins, and he talks about this all the time. 38% of the impact that a politician, presidential candidate, CEO, anybody makes on another human being or a group of human beings is the voice tone. But 55% is actually the body language. When you say, this is the greatest economy in the Western world, we are the envy of the world. Are you moving forward? Do you have a look of certainty in your facial gestures? Are your shoulders square? All of that. What are your gestures? Are your gestures going down instead of waffling about? So the body language is incredibly important. We're going to pick that up. And if you think about it, the quality and the quantity of your body language and your voice tone amplifies or discounts from the actual words that you have. So what is the body language when Donald Trump versus Joe Biden are saying the things that they're saying? I wish fact checking actually did break through more. I agree with you. It doesn't. It's too little. It's too late. But, we are where we are. I mean, people either can choose to educate themselves or not. But in the moment, a politician scores points by having great, confident, very powerful body language that is appropriate for the content combined with that content. We'll see.
So,
And Donald Trump is actually pretty damn good at it.
yeah.
And so is Joe Biden when he's on.
Yeah. Well, I think Joe Biden does better under pressure when there's conflict. And I actually think he would do better if an audience was against him. Because remember the State of the Union, when those guys came after him and they started booing him or whatever, I mean, that's when he really lit up. So I think I'm not sure they're doing themselves any favor with these rules. I have to be honest with you. But listen, Donald Trump is now a convicted felon, right? So I don't think it doesn't feel to me when I see him that he has the same swagger as he once did. I'll have to see on the debate stage if that still comes through. He is not as sharp as he was 4 years ago as well. Then President Biden has his son, Hunter Biden, who is now in this legal deep water. Now he has been convicted. So then what should Biden's strategy be defending himself? Because Donald Trump is going to try to get under his skin and probably attack his son.
You know what? I hope he does. For Joe Biden, I hope he does, because here's my answer that I think Joe Biden should give. Say, Mr. Trump, when my incredible, wonderful son, Hunter, was 2 years old, the sweetest kid you've ever seen, and he's in a car with my wife and his sister and his brother, in one split second, the most horrible thing that could ever happen to any human being happened to him at the age of 2. He looks over, he sees his mother bleeding and dying in front of him. He looks over inside that car on their way to get Christmas trees. He looks over and he sees his baby sister he loves so much bleeding and dying in front of him. And he and his brother Bo are struggling for their lives. Now, you and I have never had to go through that, but I can only imagine, Mr. Trump, that at the age of 2, if you have gone through that your life's going to be a little challenging.
Wow.
So I beg you to get the fuck off his back.
Oof. Why aren't you in debate preps? And do you convey this to the campaign?
I am not working at that level with the campaign. I'm just helping with a few things, and I do communication strategy. I've worked on about a dozen presidential and prime ministerial campaigns all over the world. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would strongly recommend that he talk about that.
Yeah. Who's at the most? Who has the most risk? Who is the most exposure here? Is it Donald Trump or is it Joe Biden?
Uh, I think it's Joe Biden because, listen, um, when I was working for a presidential candidate in an Asian country in 20 early 2016, I saw uh, actually it was the Philippines. I was working for the opponent to Rodrigo Duterte, and he, of course, was called the Donald Trump of the Philippines. And I studied how, and we never took this guy seriously. In debate prep, we wouldn't even prep to go against Duterte because we said he said all these terrible things. He literally Duterte literally there was a woman who was raped and murdered in the Philippines in Duterte's town, and Duterte's comment was, "Oh, well, why didn't you invite me? She was very pretty." Right? And so we had the normal human response that no one in the Philippines would ever vote for someone as disgusting as that, right? And then while I was there and helping that campaign, I saw that the approval ratings for Rodrigo Duterte were not dropping. They were staying super solid.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote an article and I briefed the White House, if this was during Obama, that they needed to really take Donald Trump seriously.
Yeah.
There is something, Don, about a strong man who never is wrong, who never backs down, who seems to inspire the insecure parts, the deep inner insecure parts of millions of people, which is why we're seeing, I think, a rise in strongmen and fascistic leaders, like Putin and Erdogan and all these people. Um, so I think Donald Trump is bulletproof
Mm-hmm.
in many ways. And that's why a little flub or a freeze or something that Joe Biden does, because he does not have the strong body language and that strong man vibe that Donald Trump has, he is far more vulnerable. And honestly, and obviously, everybody's going to watch for this. If Joe Biden has a little freeze, like they say was done, during that fundraiser in front of all of these people, like there were only 3,000 people watching that live. I was there in the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles. But if he has it in front of 50, 60, 70 million Americans, that could end his campaign.
Do you think he froze? Were you there?
I saw a show where Brian Tyler Cohen was saying that he was just doing what he always does and he was waving and whatever. He wasn't waving. I think it wasn't really a freeze. I think it looked like a freeze. I think it was him having just flown in from, Italy, having been perhaps tired or whatever, but being such a warm, loving man who so craves human contact and human connection. I think he was just,
Taking
a
it in?
little sleepy, a little tired, just soaking it in like Taylor Swift does at the beginning of her concerts. I think he was soaking in the crowd. Does he freeze? Does he flub? Does he walk funny? Was it awkward as hell when Obama took his hand? Yes.
Hmm.
But I think he can still run this country. And I think, and I say this to my friends in LA, I say Joe Biden is one of the best, most successful, most productive presidents we have ever had in this country. And if he's 181, if you care about restoring reproductive rights, if you care about codifying Roe v. Wade, if you care about fighting gun violence, Joe Biden is going to sign those bills, even if he's 181, as long as he has the ability to hold a pen, and his opponent will not. So, what I recommend very strongly is that we finally move beyond this thing, this death march or this sickness march or this freeze march, and we say, let's be transactional. What the F do you want in this country?
Mhm.
Do you want to pass the Women's Health Protection Act? Well, we need a president who will sign that bill. Do you want to pass background checks? We need a president who will sign that bill. Do you want more environmental, renewable, clean energy legislation? Well, only Joe Biden will sign that, and Donald Trump won't. He will veto those things. So you don't have to fall in love with or expect the most handsome, best smelling plumber
Yeah.
to come into your house at midnight when your toilet is broken. We have to be transactional in this country. And Joe Biden is going to continue to give the majority of Americans what they want.
And
Donald
not every
Trump won't.
politician and not every leader or president or whatever has to be inspiring. I mean, Barack Obama is once in a generation. Even Bill Clinton, I think it's once in a generation. There are very few.
I
Kennedy,
agree.
and that they're once. Even Ronald Reagan, once in a generation, and Donald Trump. I'm just saying that they don't come along very often, and that's why they usually rise to the top. But you can be an effective leader without being, oh my gosh, I get a tingle up my leg whenever I hear him speak. What about third-party candidates like Jill Stein or Robert F. Kennedy
I
Jr.?
do want to ask, if your life is so devoid of stimulation that you need to get it from the presidential candidate or the president, then maybe you need to look at your own life.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the folks, the MAGA people who follow Donald Trump around everywhere he goes, right? So, but there are people who, but those people go to the polls. They're energized. So you say what you
And
want. Maybe there's a void there, but he is filling that void. But again, let's move on. I want to talk about third-party candidates: Jill Stein, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You think they should be on the stage?
well, they missed they missed the requirements. Not only personally, not only do I think they should not be on the stage, I think they shouldn't even be allowed um, to run in swing states.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, the criterion for CNN was you need to be on the ballot in at least 207 states with 270 electoral votes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that means you actually are on the ballot in enough states to be elected president if you win all those states. I think it should be a requirement for a third party candidate to be on a swing state, on the ballot in a swing state. This will never happen, but they have to show that they have some reasonable chance of actually winning that state because we women have lost their reproductive rights. And we as Americans have lost so many rights because of third party candidates. We have Samuel Alito and John Roberts on the Supreme Court because third party candidate Ralph Nader was running in Florida and caused uh, Al Gore to lose by 537 votes. We have 3 Donald Trump appointees on the court because Jill Stein, who is running yet again in 2016, defeated Hillary Clinton in 3 swing states. Had Jill Stein not been on the ballot in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and Ralph Nader had not run, there would be 5 Democratic Supreme Court justices instead of 5 Republican Supreme Court justices who were the majority, the massive majority of the votes that took away women's rights in Dobbs.
I don't.
I,
I
I
don't, I don't
just
disagree
they
with
can
you.
only screw things up.
Why did they do it? And when you tell them that, they become very indignant about. Of course, everyone has the right to run, but you have to look realistically. A third-party candidate is not going to win. Ross Perot came the closest, and even he didn't have a real shot, if you know what I mean, right?
Well, Ross Perot, just for people who are Bobby Kennedy fans, and I know Bobby Kennedy, I think he's an incredibly smart, impressive guy, but there is zero chance that Robert Kennedy will win. We'll say, well, he's doing better. Well, head to head with Trump, he beats Trump. head to head with Biden. I said, but that's not reality. Don't be disingenuous. You have to beat both of them. And in every one of those states that you're going to be on the ballot with Trump and Biden, Bobby, I love you, man, but you're going to finish third. And you're right, Ross Perot, the most third-party support of anybody in modern American history. He got 19% of the vote. Do you know how many states he won?
Zero.
Zero. Do you know how many electoral votes he got?
None?
Zero. He got zero electoral votes. That's not 270.
I know, but they always use him as an example. Well, what about Ross? Ross Perot was a very rich man that could keep himself in the race for as long as he wanted to, and which, again, doesn't, as I say, once in a lifetime thing, once in a generation. That doesn't happen very often. You believe in civic engagement, and you want young people to get involved, and you believe that they could help actually decide who the candidate will be, right, or who the president will be. Michigan had the highest midterm turnout with just 36% of young people coming out. What's the solution to that?
So the solution is a radical change in how we talk about politics, how we engage in politics. How do you get your voice to be heard, right? And in our system, the only way that happens is by voting. Not the only way, the major way. You can protest, you can do an encampment at UCLA or Columbia, whatever. But voting is the way we choose the leaders and the policies, whatever. And there is a magic formula. It's a magic number, and that is 270. If you can get 270 electoral votes for the president you want, you can help crowdsource that, you're going to get the president you want. If you can get 270 elected officials, and when I teach this to young people and we gamify it, it makes sense to them. If you can engage and have others engage and use social media to crowdsource this, and you can get 270 elected officials to believe in and to do what you want, you can accomplish and get anything you want in America. Anything. Let's talk about women's reproductive rights. So many young people care about that, as they should, right? The magic number is 270. You need 218 people who are going to vote for that bill, and it's called the Women's Health Protection Act. Already passed the House of Representatives in 2021 and 2022. If you can get 218 people in the House to pass that, it passes.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to get 51 elected senators in the Senate to agree to overcome the filibuster and create a carve out for that bill and vote for it. So you need 218 in the House, you need 51 in the Senate, and then you need someone in the White House with a pen to sign it. 218 plus 51 plus 1. So that's the magic number of getting anything you want. So when I tell that to young people, I say, please be transactional, right? You don't have to love the person running for the House or the person running for the Senate or the president. You just have to get them to commit to doing that. So here's the bottom line. At this very moment, Don, there are 264 elected officials in the House and the Senate and the White House that will restore women's reproductive rights and codify Roe v. Wade. There are 264 out of 270. Democrats need to pick up 4 more members of Congress in the House, 1 more member of the United States Senate who is willing to overcome the filibuster, which all of the current Democratic candidates are, hold the ones that they have, and reelect Joe Biden. But the tricky part, the scary, scary part for those people who do want reproductive rights for women is that guess what the magic number right now is for Republicans and Donald Trump's supporters? To have a national abortion ban.
Isn't it 1 or 2?
It's actually, realistically, it's 1, technically it's 2. So the Republicans have a majority. You got both. You got the Republicans have a majority in the House. They can pass a national abortion ban, 15 weeks, 12 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 weeks. They can pass whatever they want. Right now, they have 49 members of the Senate, right? they're going to pick up West Virginia for sure, right? So that's the one that they need, but that's not even a question because Joe Manchin is retiring and a Republican will replace him. And so that right there, they're at 269. What's the 270th?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a question, isn't it? Is
No, it's the Trump. It's Trump.
oh, Trump is a two. You
So,
mean with the, yeah,
right. So realistically,
with his pen.
Democrats are Democrats are 6 elected people on November 5th away from codifying Roe v. Wade and restoring reproductive rights. And Republicans are just
One.
one.
Yeah. Wow.
Because when Republicans have we'll say 2, because they have to win the West Virginia seat, but they will. So once they win the West Virginia seat, they elect Donald Trump. That does a double duty because Donald Trump's vice president, who I'm thinking is going to be Rubio, but his vice president actually breaks the tie. They now have 51 votes to overcome the Democratic filibuster and pass a national abortion ban. And then there is an orange president sitting in the White House ready to take his pen and sign it. And that national abortion ban, what people need to know, is going to affect you in California, in New York, in Illinois, and everywhere across the country because of the supremacy clause.
Well, the pressure is on for Joe Biden on Thursday, and the pressure is on for people to, as you say, you don't have to be completely inspired or fall in love with your candidate. You just have to, the one that's going to take you, get you the closest there.
The reason I go through it is because people do not know how our system works. We don't understand civics in our country.
Yeah, we were talking about that. I was talking about that with my husband because we both had civics in high school. They don't teach civics anymore, I don't think. I think people are really, and I don't mean to, to call anybody out here. I'm not saying anything bad about folks. It's just not taught. People just don't know civics anymore. They're ignorant.
A very major person in DC, when I was there a couple of weeks ago, looked me in the eye and said, raising civics literacy amongst young people is the most important thing we need to do in this election.
Yeah.
Because most young people, honestly, John, I'm sure you've heard this as well, think that the system is broken. Yeah. They think their vote doesn't count. They don't care about people like me.
Can I tell you why that's happening? Can I tell you where folks are learning their civics from? They're learning it from Republicans have figured out that they've got to win young people over, and so people, places like PragerU, Ben Shapiro, and all, they're actually focusing on young people, whether it's college campuses or whatever, especially young men. And then that translates into, Shapiro, Joe Rogan, and they're all in these digital spaces. And that's where young people are learning their civics from. Not necessarily from high school, not necessarily from college, but from people who have the smarts, quite frankly, you got to give it to them, to invest in young people, to get conservative messages across that aren't always necessarily based in fact, but based in Republican or conservative ideals. And then that's how you get a Donald Trump. That's why people are screaming for Donald Trump at UFC matches. That's why there's so much engagement on digital streaming and social platforms for these sort of conservative, areas and folks, because they're winning. Their strategy is working.
Right. But you've heard the phrase that people vote against their own best interests.
Yes, they do.
And that's what's happening. And so the antidote to that, and I think that's where you were going to go here in terms of engaging young people, the antidote is to do what Republicans have actually done to win thousands of elections over the last 34 years.
Yep.
And it's generate emotional, really passionate, single issue voters, right? God, gays, and guns. And now they've added immigration. The Democratic Party has more single issues that are appealing to young people and everyone than the Republicans by a factor of 100. And so my recommendation to young people, and my 95-year-old mom's recommendation to young people, she's so cute, she goes viral on TikTok whenever we talk about things like this, is pick the issue that you are most passionate about. What do you care about most? And vote for that. Find the people. So if you want women's reproductive rights restored, that's it. Become a single women's rights issue voter and vote for the people in the House, in the Senate, for president, for governor, whatever, who are going to do that, who
Well,
are going
that's
to
what Republicans
restore.
have done when it comes to abortion. That's why I don't like Donald Trump. I'm not electing a pastor or a preacher, but he's going to put judges in the court, and they're going to, overturn Roe v. Wade, right? So,
Right. And it
right,
worked.
and it worked. And right, we're going to put people on the Supreme Court who really think that the Second Amendment is absolute and is sacrosanct. I get what you're saying. It's so interesting. Were you listening? I had a conversation with Tim Miller from the Bulwark, and we thought we were smart and came up with this God, gays, and guns thing, but maybe we didn't.
By the way, Tim Miller is great. He's an
No,
awesome
no, no,
communicator,
no.
but
I'm
no.
sorry. I'm wrong. We said gumbo because he lives in Louisiana and I'm from Louisiana. There was a gumbo in there, so God, gays, gumbo, and guns.
Oh, okay. I live in LA. Gumbo's not as important out here, but you go for that.
All right, avocado toast and quinoa. We'll come up with something for that. So then, listen, that's the long-term plan that you're talking about. What about in the short term? What can Joe Biden do to engage, and Democrats to engage these young folks? What do they do
No,
until
John,
November?
it's incredibly short term. The message is, do you want to restore women's reproductive rights? I will sign that bill. My opponent will
Okay,
not.
let me
Do you
let me
want?
tell you this. Let me tell you this, Richard. All right, that sounds good, and I know that's a strong issue. But when I'm talking to young people, went to the barbershop. You see my haircut today? Trump gave me a check. We got to do something about immigration. They're taking our jobs. Maybe they should build that wall. I'm just saying. And as you say, women's reproductive rights, that's very important. Don't get me wrong. It also is something that will be motivating among women, not necessarily motivating among men, which is a shame. But it's got to be
I was
more
just
than just
using
that
that as an
one issue.
example.
It's got to be more than just that one
So,
issue. Where's my
no,
money? Where's my check?
John,
I don't want to pay taxes. I'm just saying.
okay, first of all, I hear that all the time. Say, Trump gave me a check. Well, Trump gave you a $600 check. Joe Biden gave you a $1,400 check. Do they not remember that?
No, because it's the messaging. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that Democrats and this administration are bad at messaging. So
Listen,
if for $1,400, but I didn't see the check. His name, Trump's name was on the check. I saw it. Trump's out
right.
there touting, I did this, I gave you this, I'm better for black people, and look, I'm persecuted, and I was wrongly charged like you are. I came up with a justice system, and it's rigged.
I know. And Trump was so much better for the Central Park Five, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so we could talk about this all day long. So it is not just the issue that. So when I engage with young people, it's not just the issues that I care about. I say, what do you care about? And a lot of people, like Uber drivers and Lyft drivers all over the country, I say, what do you care about? And they'll tell me. And a lot of them, the majority of them, men and women, say, women's reproductive rights. But forget it. Do you smoke weed? Do you smoke weed? Well, this is the weed elections of 2024, right? We have yet to formally decriminalize marijuana, and there are still people in jail for simple marijuana
And
offenses.
then other people
We
are
could pass.
making millions of dollars because they are actually selling it legally. How is that fair?
Well, no, it's not fair. And Democrats are the only ones that are going to nationalize, decriminalize weed and expunge convictions across the country. What else do you care about? You care about gun violence. You want to ban assault weapons. Yeah, well, Democrats and Joe Biden are the only ones that are going to do that. Do you want to fight climate change even more? Do you want to have even more renewable energy? Do you want dreamers? Do you want dreamers to be waking up every morning being scared to death that they're going to be deported, even though they've lived in this country since they were one? Or do you want to pass the DREAM Act And only Democrats are going to get you there, and only Joe Biden's going to sign that. What is your issue? Because, Don, 95 out of 100 times, the issues that young people and people of color care about are the issues that only Democrats are pursuing, introducing laws, passing laws, and signing laws
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
And that's what we need to communicate.
yeah.
Republicans are not your
But
friends, even
Republicans,
though Donald Trump says he
but Donald
is.
Trump is working that crowd. He's making that crowd think that he's out. He's for them.
Can, can we agree? Can we agree that Donald Trump is probably the best communicator slash manipulator slash con man that we have seen in our
Yeah,
lifetimes?
of course. But
He's
as we say, we
unbelievably
Ben knew
so.
that. But you know, we knew it for.
Right.
I've been preaching that since 2015. But still, he became president. I'm just trying to tell. I'm just trying to told you. It's, it doesn't necessarily penetrate. Okay, so listen. I want to talk about voting rights, and then we're going to move on because this is important. Voting rights, limiting of access. If you look at what's going on, the voting laws limiting access to things like mail-in voting, same-day registration, shortening voting windows, restricted by mostly Republican-controlled states. So then what do you say to the working-class youth, the people in the Midwest and the South, who are having their access limited by state legislatures? What you say, get out and vote.
No, but here's the thing. So if Nike was launching a brand new shoe,
Right on.
right? You see people literally camping out in front of Nike stores the night before. If Taylor Swift is going to give a concert, you see kids spending days online and doing everything they can to get their Taylor Swift tickets. The problem here is demand, not only supply. We have a demand problem around voting. I have never not voted. My daughter is 38. She has never not voted. And, you know, and the thing is, if you want to have easier access to voting, then you have to vote for Democrats because they want that too.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the Electoral College, right? Because, usually Democrats will win the Electoral College. I mean, Democrats will win the popular vote, but they'll lose the Electoral College. There was a guest who's on, David Pakman, right? There was a guest on David Pakman who, I ran a soundbite the other day, who said that the Electoral College is DEI for Republicans. And he's shocked that Republicans are against diversity, equity, and inclusion, but that's what the Electoral College is. So, if they want to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, maybe they should get rid of the Electoral College. What do you think?
Republicans benefit greatly from the DEI programs that are enshrined in the United States Constitution. As many of you know, we don't pick our president based on the popular vote. I wish we did, but we don't. That would be the meritocratic way to do it. No, instead, we do so based on the Electoral College that gives extra weight to smaller states and who just so happens to live in those smaller states disproportionately. It tends to be white, rural folks who are more likely to vote Republican.
First of all, that's one of the most brilliant sound bites I've ever heard. I love it. I love it. The Electoral College is the most anti-democratic thing in the history of democracy. And if it wasn't in the Constitution, it would be unconstitutional. It is a horrible, horrible thing. But I have some really good, but it exists. And the reason you cannot, if you really care about electing Joe Biden, for example, you cannot vote for Robert Kennedy. Not as a protest vote. You can't vote for Jill Stein. You can't vote for Cornel West because under our current electoral college system, that is a wasted vote and it'll most likely elect Donald Trump. So that's the way it is. It just is. You cannot change it. However, but you can change it. You can't change the way it's going to function in 2024, but we can eliminate the Electoral College as we know it for our very next presidential election in 2028. Did you know that?
Yeah. And how would you do that? By electing Joe Biden. Is that what you're going to say?
No. No. How would that do? There is a piece of legislation called the National Popular Vote interstate compact, which almost nobody knows about. And if young people who hate the Electoral College actually got out and voted in the swing states for Democratic state senators and state legislators, assembly people or House of Delegates people, whatever it's called in their state, and Democratic governors, we could get enough votes to pass the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact in the additional few states that we need to do, because that will end the Electoral College as we know it. And it could even happen by 2028, where we would be electing our 2028 president. Forget the Electoral College, forget doing it by states, where every single vote counts. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. But it's a state by state thing. 16 states plus the District of Columbia have already passed it. We have 205 electoral votes worth of states. We just need 65 more.
Yeah, well, Republicans don't like that.
Well, but
Because
we do have a democracy here.
I agree.
And if we elect a majority that can pass those bills, then we can change anything.
The most populous places in the country are Democratic places, right? Big cities, Democratic strongholds. Democrats would win every time. And so Republicans are going to fight tooth and nail not to have, to keep the Electoral College in place.
Well, Joe Biden won by 7 million votes in 2020. Do you know how many actual votes he won the election by through the Electoral College?
No, it was just like a couple 100,000. It wasn't that many.
No, way less.
It was like 30,000?
42,800 votes was the difference in Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin. Had he not gotten those 42,800 votes more in those states than Donald Trump would be serving a second term. Right?
Crazy. Do you think this debate is going to have an impact on the turnout?
I do. I do. I think that it's going to be super clear. And again, I'm all about transactional civics.
Okay, I get you.
Right?
It's going to be super. I get it. I know where you're going. I think the audience knows where you're going. So then why this early one? Was there something weird in here about this early debate? Because usually debates don't happen this early. And then there's another one after that. So, you know.
Well, there's a cynical answer to that. And that is that the people who wanted this want to show that Joe Biden is either competent to be our president under pressure or not competent. And that this should be done before the Democratic convention. So if that latter conclusion was reached by the country, that there would still be time to replace him. There are a lot of people who want to replace Joe Biden.
That's what I was thinking. Is there some strategy here for that? Are we not reading between the lines?
So I've been saying this for a long time. And Donald Trump's been screwing up big time. You know, my my close personal doctor, Ronnie Johnson, right? Come on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's both of them. So if either one of them has a Mitch McConnell brain freeze or some incredibly embarrassing thing, we are now before both conventions, and the Republican Party and the Democratic Party can find another candidate. And there is somebody, I think Cenk Uygur with Piers Morgan was saying, you know, forget Gavin Newsom, forget this, forget that. Let's just have boring people. Let's have
He said
Josh
it on this
Shapiro.
program. He said it on this program. And we go check out the episode where he's here. He said he thinks it would be great to have this sort of, I think is it a broker convention where people are just fighting it out, you know, on the convention floor, and may the best man or woman win. That's what.
Well, that's how they used to be. They were super fun.
Yeah. All right.
I don't think that's impossible, Don. I think
Do you think that could happen?
Again, the debate is going to be a huge part of all of this. If either party gets really nervous about their candidate after this debate, there is still plenty of time for there to be a replacement for either party.
That would be, as they say, some crazy shit.
But
Anyway,
remember, you're old enough to remember when there were these broker
no,
conventions
I'm
and it
not.
came down to the wire.
I'm too young for that. Yes, I am.
You're a student of history. You know about this stuff.
Yes, I know. Richard Greene, thank you. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's super fun, man. I just think one of the things America needs is more Don Lemons. So I'm glad you're out there, and you've always been such a phenomenal interviewer. You're so clear, you're so centered, you understand what's going on, and it's really a joy to be with you. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. So I'll pay you later, and I can get rid of my agent now. Thank you. Thanks for watching The Don Lemon Show. Make sure you click on the image in the top right to subscribe to my channel and the thumbnail in the bottom right to watch more content from my show. And I'll see you next time.